Talking Shop Network makes no apologies for what you're about to hear. The host might though. It's the $9 podcast with Drewski. Because moderating for Pro Wrestling's Good Brothers wasn't enough work. Talking wrestling and more on all major podcast networks.
Welcome to the $9 Podcast, part of the Talking Shop Network, and available weekly worldwide wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Drew. I'm the moderator of the Good Brothers Patreon at patreon.com/talkingshop. I've known both Machine Gun Carl Anderson and Luke Doc Gallows since the year 2014, coinciding with the creation of both the Bullet Club and the Talking Shop podcast itself. And I've been also known Pepper Parks, a.k.a. The Blade, for almost that long. I bring up The Blade because Cutting It Up with The Blade was announced this past week to be coming to the growing Talking Shop network of podcasts starting about September, October, give or take. You know, this week's been a rather busy one in terms of what the Talking Shop network is morphing into, actually. I mean, Machine Gun and Gallows have been talking up the idea of the Talking Shop Network. It's more or less their own version of what Howard Stern has done with the various shows on the Sirius Network channel. Well, in a pro wrestling related vein, more or less. For the boys, they wouldn't do wrestling at all. This week saw the debut of the Welcome to Wrestling podcast as part of the network, which is a long-running podcast that's currently nearing the 100 episode milestone. You know, check them out. They're real good. However, sometimes, podcasts just end with no warning. So they're apparently happening another show on the network that was starting to build a bit of a buzz. And that would be the Grunt Gang podcast. An unspoken part about all the shows on the network is the philosophy of iron sharpening iron. So it's like, everybody encouraging everybody else. On the current episode of Talking Shop, Doc, Gallows asked a pointed question. Okay, which one of the network shows was daring enough to go try and blaze their own path? It's good enough to you're doing on the Patreon. Try doing it on your own. Well, I made a decision to bet on myself about 3 months ago with the $9 podcast, while waiting for my call up to the majors, as it were, for the network debut. It was about the same time the Good Brothers were roaming pro wrestling, touring Pro Wrestling Noah and obliterating Japanese steakhouses. As my show is currently available worldwide, has listeners in Singapore, Brazil, England, India, and the U.S. now. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't envy the amount of listeners the network shows get with the boost that being featured on the flagship show has brought them. It's only natural. You want everybody to hear your stuff. Everyone else on the network has been featured. My relative anonymity has allowed me to fine-tune things as I wait for the call from the ballpen, as it were. Well, as everyone who listened to this week's Talking Shop now knows, the timing's finally lining up. Sometimes it doesn't take, communication. It's like, will this news please everyone? Well, it'd be silly for me to think there'd be a unanimously positive response. And that's fine. I tend not to let Machine Gun and Gallows down by them giving me the ball and seeing what happens when I make my network debut, whenever that is. I'll get my first share of criticism mixed with ageism cracks. I get that a lot in the nest, and generally ribbing on the square from certain parts of the nest. And again, it's all well and good. Comes with the territory. You have to have a thick skin about that. I'll remind people that seem to have forgotten. The $9 podcast was the first podcast on the Talk Shop Patreon, at least a really amateur version of what it is now, but that fact remains. Let's get that into what's been happening in the wrestling world this week. Just for shits and giggles, why not? As always, we begin by covering another stellar episode of AEW Dynamite. What can you say? I mean, it's framed by compelling Continental Cup tournament quarterfinal matches, some actual movement in the trios division, some returns, and a somewhat surprising Dynamite debut mixed in with building up the main event match at All In at Wembley between, Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, which has been a long time coming. The story they're telling, apparently the last ride of Nigel McGuinness, as a performer in the Continental Cup tournament, it's one of those things that Tony Khan does very well in regards to acknowledging wrestling history. Just the first round matchup between Nigel and Shibata was enough to sell a lot of people in this tournament format, actually. Two wrestlers were famously thought would never be able to wrestle again due to career-ending injuries. And sharing the same ring, in this was sort of the fever dream type of match that could only happen in your video games or EFEDs. Really. I mean, now Nigel apparently injuring his leg in that match added another layer to his quest for Wembley. The plants seed of doubt about his quest. Can't make it too obvious, His match against the criminally underrated luchador submission wizard from CMLL, known as Hechicero, continue to play out up those doubts, as for some people, it's Nigel admits post match that after securing a win, he didn't really beat Hechicero, he survived him. The other quarterfinal match between Switchblade Jay White and Jon Moxley, well, there's a lot of people's predictions for the actual finals of Wembley. But the blind draw aspect of the tournament itself said otherwise. It's one of those, you expect surprises. It's like some would say that Mox getting was predictable to advance. Well, you have to have a little bit of predictability in some of this shit. Storyline, however, due to the blind draw, again, Mox could be facing Claudio, Eddie Kingston, or his personal kryptonite and Kyle O'Reilly in the next round. Who knows? Any of those options are good or seem viable, which speaks again to the absolute depth of talent on the AEW roster. Further that, the return of Takeshita from a really strong showing in New Japan's G1 tournament. I mean, the build-up was sure to be a standout match at All In for the AEW Continental Championship against former Don Callis family stablemates and Kyle Fletcher and Okada. Is something to look forward to. I mean, Kyle's made the case this year. He's destined to become a future ace in this company with his body of work. He's been putting on consistent bangers, and as has Takeshita, he's consistently outstanding in every match he's in, no matter the promotion. 3-contract Takeshita and all that. So no matter where he is, he kills it. Meanwhile, little Kazu may be having the time of his life right now. I mean, his current position, resident, because resident instigator in the Don Callis family, but make no mistake about it. Just triple threat match at Wembley's tailor-made for Big Match Okada to remind everyone how legendary he truly is. It's going to be a long one. It's going to kill everything. Now, wild card all that magnificent piece of shit Don Callis, because true form Don is going to cling to the winner of this match like the Winnipeg crusty sunglass wearing Winnipeg barnacle he is. So he figures they can't lose position. And further things like AEW makes a concerted effort to shore up certain parts of the roster when needed. Whereas the tag team division, some years it's been the women's division. Now it's the trios division. I mean, with the roster the size they have, having a vibrant trios scene is a great way to get more talent involved. And as New Japan multi-matches has shown in the past, it can be used to reduce wear and tear of the talent while allowing them to stay sharp. Which is always a good thing. You don't want guys getting hurt. I mean, Brodito and Hangman calling out everyone to challenge for the Trios Championships at Wembley is a good first step at this, actually. Could become a hell of an anarchy in the arena coming out of this. PWG Trios matches were highlights of many of their shows, so it's probably going to be an inspiration for what comes of the AEW Trios division over here. Yeah. And, the actual need for a successor to Shikara's King of Trios should also not be underreported either, because there's a demand for that. Speaking of, the demand, the Rascals, any combination of Death Riders, the Don Callis family, the Elite, Swerve and his 2 mystery partners, quote unquote, being part of this mix is it's intriguing because the obvious choice for these mystery partners might not be who everyone thinks. Watch this space for further details. Or did people forget that Swerve is tied with both Buddy Matthews and Tommy End? Did they? We shall see. Like I said, sometimes the obvious choice may not be the obvious choice. Surprise cameos by Sting's son, Steve Borden on Dynamite, confronted gloating Kevin Knight. It's pretty much it's an interesting thing. Way to debut a kid. Sting, he's been working dark matches in front of crowds before Dynamite episodes for like months now. It's sort of like paying his dues actually live. Being trained by Darby. So his inclusion as a backstage angle didn't really seem out of place. It seemed it's logical. Makes me believe he's probably probably a part of the Casino Gauntlet in his official AEW debut as a performer, maybe. I mean, there's much been made about like second generation talent paying your dues almost too much, to put it bluntly. I mean, you want to see sons and daughters of legendary talent be their own people, but there will undoubtedly be a lot of people wanting Steven to put on the Beastie 2.0. And as people have to temper their expectations. Come on. I mean, expectations for the main event for All In and Wembley could be kept, keep ratcheting up as we get closer to the event. Dynamite sit down between Kenny and Will showed that. A lot of history between both of them. It's been it's been an overriding theme in all this, stemming from their shared time in New Japan until now. There's the callbacks. You can't help but notice Kenny's becoming closer to his cleaner persona during every time you see him. There's a whole build up. Still true, but well in some respects like a young boy he was when he joined Chaos. Like he doesn't think Will's grown any. I like the extreme intensity he showed against Kenny at the press conference at Wrestle Kingdom a couple of years ago. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. Will's anger was subdued, so it's only rising. He only rose to the surface when Kenny mentioned, his stepson might maybe need a new role model. I mean, one can frame it as like Will is Ahab and Kenny is the Great White Will. He's obsessed with destroying. But that's a little too literary for a lot of wrestling folk. I mean, we've only a couple more shows left in Wembley, the hype's building, because they're up to, ticket sales are over like 40,000 and climbing. Now, over in the sports entertainment land, Kevin versus Punk. Constraints on the promos against each other, they're still managing to build anticipation, which is saying something about their professionalism. But it goes without saying, this promo exchange in the Ring of Honor ring in 2010 would have made heads explode. Because it would have been more visceral, more real. I mean, constant repetition of the same talking points that every CM Punk promo exchange he's had since returning to wrestling, stemming from AEW to now starting to fatigue of some fans. I mean, in NXT, women are being booked stronger than the men's division, and it can be seen as both a good and a bad thing. When you have your own talent and Grayson Waller trying to blur the lines by bringing this up in a promo, it's another example of like trying to work the marks while in the same breath claiming not to be affected by what the IWC said regarding the product. So you can't have it both ways. It's like it always still some confusion in the 95% of the viewing audience that's left wondering what the hell are you talking about? Because it's you're doing promos that are only aimed at a small minority of the audience. You're expecting there's going to be confusion. The only good thing I've seen lately over there is bringing Haku in to help out Crystal Tama and get tag gold. Hiromu coming into Shinsuke against the Tongans also means Dragon Lee better keep his head on his swivel. If you know, you know. WWE wouldn't even think about putting Hiromu and Dragon Lee together because that's too dangerous of a feud. That's a story to revisit later. I mean, add to that the absolute fumbling of them letting go Ilya Dragunov. Stone cold killer. I think Dragunov's only problem is he was born in the wrong decade. It's too intense for like the current product for WWE. They didn't know what to do with him. So his style translates more well into like what New Japan especially does, and New Japan needs Gaijin in the worst way. He would slot in really well. But AEW is tailor made for him. He could have. If the timing hadn't been what it was, he could have ended up in the G1. you know, but it's you know, if the rumors are true and if he happens to, oh, I don't know, appear in the Casino Gauntlet at Wembley in about 10 days, considering he let his contract expire, so there's no 90-day freeze out. He could be in the Continental Classic and putting on, you know, establishing himself as the absolute badass that he is. If you've never seen a Dragunov match, it's like go look up his matches against Walter. You know, everybody brings up the matches with Walter, but he had like a match with Shingo Takagi in PWG, battle, you know, early in his career, like the Battle of Los Angeles, 2018 was like a first round match, and that was something. It started out slow, but you could see. You could see like the skeleton, what he would become later on. You know, currently, you could see the potential there. Yeah, and I'd love to see them run that back now in New Japan with Shingo. If it comes to pass, it'll be very cool. It'll be very, it'll be very, very cool. And I've not, you're looking for like something cool. There's like there's an app that I saw that just came out. I'm trying to remember. I forget the name of it. But, somebody put together like a database for like independent wrestling companies, and it's like independent promotions, independent wrestlers, with maps, like and calendars of shows and stuff. It's still in its embryonic stages, but with the bare bones of what it is, it's very intriguing. And it shows potential, and it's something to look forward to in the coming future. As they figure out how to as they work out the kinks of it, and I'm sure. I'm gonna look up the app's called Hot Tag. You look that up, it'll have like you can go by you type in by region, you can type in by event, for like calendar for the month, like anything locally near me. I can go to independent shows, and it's pretty. It's pretty good for what it is right now. But 6 months from now, it has the potential to be really, really good. That's like again, it's gonna be another quick one today because before I go, I gotta give a little bit of a shout out to. Before I give that shout out, I'm gonna do metal recommendations of the week. The past couple days, put out a couple of bangers have just dropped. It's like God's Hate just dropped an EP out of nowhere, and it rages, and it's it's a 3-song EP. It's dedicated to the late Bo Loaders, and the songs are like highly personal, and it's very intense. And they spent their time, the 11-month hiatus they had, like refining these 3 songs. They have like about another album, like several other songs in the can waiting, but they need to put this out now. They wanted to put it out now, and it's very cathartic for for those who miss Bo. I only talked to Bo on Twitter a couple times. It seemed like a real cool dude. Yeah. Also, first new Down song in 10 years just dropped, called Blood Oath. Coming out the new album called Volume 5. And holy shit. I miss them bastards so much. It's like the combination of Kirk Winstein and Pepper, and playing in drop B, playing Sabbath riffs and drop B will never get old. Never fucking get old. It's like, the 2 years, and they've been touring as, Phil's been touring with Pantera, the Pantera reunion, really sharpened his voice, back, because he's singing better than he has in quite a while, and it shows on the song. And they live debuted the song a couple nights ago, and I saw the live video of that, and it was outstanding. They were only it's only like the second night of the tour, and they were tighter than hell. And if down is coming to your town, drop everything and go, because they are the definition of a metal supergroup. Members of members of Pantera, Corrosion of Conformity, Crowbar, I Hate God, all together, all together as a brotherhood, representing New Orleans and just bringing it. The NOLA albums dropped 30 something years ago, and it's still as fresh today as it was then. And I've heard some people a couple people talk shit. They're going, oh, it's their load reload album. It's like, okay, but it's sort of happens to every band. It's like, why don't you play like you did when you were in your 20s? And, why can't you stay? Metallica gets it all the time. It's like, why does it? I remember they wrote Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets when they're 23, 24. And it's like, why can't you sing like you're 23, 24 anymore? Age, fuck, time catches us all. It's like, be happy they're still touring, for crying out loud. Like I said, enjoy bands like Down while you can, because because like me, they're not getting any younger. A lot of your favorite metal bands are not getting any younger. I mean, Judas Priest just did a 50th anniversary tour, and it's like, and Rob Halford's in his 70s, getting close to 80. It's a lot of these, the Scorpions been around for 60 years, right? That kind of longevity usually happens only for blues musicians. It's like, nobody talks about shit about blues musicians being in their 80s and still playing, right? They just accept it for what it is. But for some reason, in the rock field, you're 80, you're in your 80s. I mean, the Stones are in their 80s, and they're still killing it. And and Rush, oh yeah, Rush too. Rush are pushing in the 70. For both Geddy and Alex, and they're still killing it, right? And it's one of those things I'll never pretend to understand, I guess. I'll go ahead and give a shout out to the Talking Shop Recap kids for the words of encouragement about me making my eventual network debut. I really appreciate that. It's one thing about the Nesters support the Nesters for the most part. Some have a hard time doing it. You know who you are. I digress. Well, go ahead and end this right now. This show is available worldwide on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and RSS.com. Really, actually, yeah. Remember I said earlier, I went out on my own and did this stuff. It's like, I haven't sat idly by. It's like, trudging my own path. I'm like, one listener at a time. Every time I get at least one more listener, it's like, hey, it's a bonus. It's like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Want to support the show? It's like a merch shilling at the $9 podcast at dashery.com. Email my elderly ass at the $9 podcast at yahoo.com. Lurking in the bushes as I do. And you want to catch up on episodes you missed, it's like youtube.com/$9 podcast. And support the boys, the Good Brothers, Talking Shop, everybody involved in that enterprise, at patreon.com/Talking Shop. I could say some things about the new Talking Shop studio, about how I was real interested to see, Gunn actually wearing headphones in the studio for first time in years, right? But the headphones they picked out, they had the mics built in, gaming headphones and mics. They look like, put baseball hats on them, look like NFL football coaches on the sideline, like calling in plays. Yeah. They'll all still look like, interrogations happen when the cameras are off, but hey, baby steps, baby steps. So, but again, I digress, because because it's the one thing, the tradition for Talking Shop, it's ball busting ball busting is encouraged, but as long as you don't get unbrotherly about it, and that's happened on more than one occasion, and it never ends well. But it is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead.
Thanks for listening to the $9 podcast. Support the show by going to the $9 podcast or going to patreon.com/talkinshop to dive headlong into the insanity. See you next week.